Hey, all you D words. It's Beardiest Gaming coming at you with yet another. I don't even know what I want to call this, whether it's another week in gaming, just two idiots talking into a microphone that nobody's going to listen to, or drinking with geniuses.
I think we
Still up
should
in
call
the
it
air.
Mortal Podcast. You know what?
Nobody
That's
gives a shit what you think. Nobody
oh,
gives a fuck.
up.
Raul, Dean,
Who the
if you
fuck are
will, if
you?
that's even your real name. Anyway,
Who the fuck
Dean
are
wanted
you,
to call
Dwayne the
in.
Rock Johnson?
At any rate, Dean called in because he's been watching my Joan of Arc Age of Empires 2 campaign, and he has some very vehement and he feels very strongly about how Joan of Arc has been portrayed in history, as well as women in combat prior to. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you want to elaborate on that? Is it just women in combat in general, or in medieval times, Europe, Western Europe? What have you, Dean? What has gotten into your craw?
Well, I'll tell you what, Matt. You're not the only series of YouTube videos I like to peruse. I've got a variety of interests, so I'm all out there on YouTube, on the internet, looking at things. And I think a lot of people today, a lot of this fashionable fourth wave feminism, fourth wave, third wave. I can't remember if they're like the Nazis with the Reichs. Anyway, doesn't matter. This new age neo-feminism has kind of got me riled a little bit. Not to sound like an AM news pundit, but there's
What?
the fuck was
What
that?
is there?
Would an alien spaceship just land in your fucking living room?
No.
Oh,
One, I'm not
okay.
in the living
Well,
room.
all
I'm not
right.
allowed. I'm
Maybe we
not
can
allowed to do
fucking
this in the
edit
living
that
room.
out. But you're fucking recording this on a fucking speaking spell in your basement. Anyway,
Go ahead.
this neo-feminism has co-opted a lot of historical figures to serve their own ends. And I know I'm portraying it in like an Alex Jones nefarious way. It's not some
Could you be
great
more
plot, but
specific with the figures? What figures are they co-opting?
figures, Matt. Well, first of all, Joan of Arc, who you've been playing, has been elevated to some sort of feminist icon, which I is very misplaced. I think once you understand the history, it's clear that someone without a historical back, although there are some crazy women out there who've written books, people who've written books. I don't know their historical credentials or their scholastic academic credentials, rather, but there are definitely women. And that's a Freudian slip. There are definitely people out there that are conflating Joan of Arc with like Rosie the Riveter when she's quite far from that. She's no Susan B. Anthony. Also, the other one that gets tossed around a lot is Boudica. The she wasn't a Celt. What was she? She was a native Briton from the Isle of Britain, and she led a revolt against the Romans. But again, she sort of falls into the same category of Joan of Arc, is very, very miscast, um, but possibly the worst one or the most obvious one I think we all hear is the story of Amazons. Women these days call themselves Amazons or warrior women, and they have this idea, and that's fine. I like whatever inspires you, whatever floats your boat, whatever interests you and piques your interest. Let your freak flag fly. That's for all I care. But what bothers me is when they misinterpret the historical fact. When people start twisting fact into something skewed, something off of normal, and we create these sort of ignorant cultural myths, these persistent touchstones that don't seem to go anywhere. And, that's what gets under my craw. The Amazons, well, first of all, the Amazons probably weren't real. People are looking at these Greeks, and to back up even further, people are reading Greeks. I don't need to tell you, beard face, that you just can't fucking trust a Greek. You can't. There's a old historical saying written by the ancient Romans. Actually, it originates Latin. I think it doesn't matter what time. I think some types after the Tiberia, the Gracchi brothers there. But it says you shake hands with a Greek, you better count your fingers afterward. And the Greeks, the greatest historical texts, all obviously contain two scoops of fucking mythology and fabrication and lies. You know, they're entertainers, they're storytellers. They're not necessarily first. You know, they weren't didn't realize they were what they were saying was going to be relegated to the sands of time, and people millennia later will read it and think that the fucking warrior. We don't believe when they say Zeus threw thunderbolts, right? But we believe they're talking about this tribe of warrior women that actually fought. No, the idea of a warrior woman was so amazing and laughable to the Greeks. It was just as fantastical as a god of the seas or fucking nymphs or Hades or Cerberus, the three-headed dog. Although I don't think he actually was a three-headed dog. If you look in the ancient literature, I think that's a modern fabrication. I think that might have originated in weird fiction of the 20s pulp magazines and everything like that. Anyway, look, the fucking Amazons are bullshit. First of all, you get a tribe of all women, right? How do they procreate? You know, that's number one right there. I know there's obviously legends of them kidnapping men with their spears and amazing skills, but let's be real about this. You know, the only real evidence of Amazons is their decorations on the jars of jugs. Fucking the Greeks and their fucking greasy olive oil merchants. They put decorations on these fucking jugs, but it'd be like saying there's a lost island of tigers in America because you see a fucking ancient box of frosted flakes. You know what I'm saying, Matt?
I think I have some sort of coherency of what you're relegating to us, Ram-a-lam-a-jam, lamb jam. Now,
But
what
it's so
about
obviously
Viking
bullshit,
shield
man.
maidens?
No, fuck.
What about Viking shield maidens?
There's some evidence of that, but the evidence that they have is that a lot of these is skeletal remains, right? So they say, oh, there's these skeletons of these women and are these skeletons buried with lots of arms and armor and a lot of decoration, and which would seem to be a military burial. And they measure these skeletons, and you can tell just by the physical structure of these skeletons whether they were men or women or not with a high degree of probability. And but I mandate that just because someone was buried with great honors, it's just a sign of nobility. We have no idea what their customs were at the time, right? Just because you were buried with swords and armor doesn't mean you were a warrior. Just like fucking soldiers who are buried without arms today, and we don't say they weren't warriors, you know. The fact that Amazons burnt off their breasts so they could shoot themselves with so they could shoot with a bow. I mean, we know today clearly that women can shoot a bow without burning their fucking left tit off. It's pretty easy. So this is something, you know, ancient, right? What were those? Thracian? There's Thracians and Scythians, and who the fuck was out there in, you know, between Persia and the fucking Mongolians. Anyway, there were certainly tribes around the Mediterranean that, or you know, Mesopotamia. There are tribes in that time period that used women in battle occasionally, and the Vikings very well were one of them. But there's we have no idea how they the specifics of this. Oh man, shit's getting real.
Now, right now, what about Joan of Arc in particular? Now, you and I both went to a Catholic college in which they had labeled named one of their buildings in her honor.
We don't need background. I don't think. Do we? Do we need this?
Ironically enough, it was the freshman females dormitory, and they had that thing under lockdown. They were attempting to protect the chastity of those young ladies as well as they could. I mean, it never worked for the administration. I think it's since gone
for
the way
most of those
adult.
girls, they had their own natural chastity belts. Their faces.
I was just gonna say that.
Just they had fucking God's birth control, ugliness, and just bad genes and a bad temperament.
Now, it's my understanding. I read up on Joan of Arc while I was doing the campaign, that she didn't. And I agree with you, at least in regards to Joan of Arc. I don't know too much about the Amazons. I haven't read too much about them yet, but I did a little bit of background reading on the internets for the Joan of Arc campaign,
I mean,
and
I don't want to shit like. Obviously, there were some women, but there wasn't a whole tribe of warrior women that was successful. In fact, in all these Greek jugs, they showed them being horribly beaten. Some suggest it may have even been a joke, like we make fun of the French army today, or
right.
like watching a woman warrior was like seeing a pig fly. It's the same sort of potentially referred to in the same sort of context. Yeah.
Now, I know with Joan of Arc, everybody always mentions how she's a peasant girl coming up, and she just starts spouting out about these visions, and how God will lead her to the right thing, and that the British don't belong there, and it's time for the French to, get off their asses and actually do something. Now, it was in I don't want to say the middle of the Dark Ages, because I think it was fairly late. I think it was 13 or 1400s. I think it was the Siege of Paris was 1429.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're getting more closer towards the the Renaissance, early modern period, but I mean, you still have the nobility, and it was before the advent of the firearm. I think they had some crude cannonry, and it seems very doubtful that a peasant girl who probably didn't have a sufficient diet to have a warrior's build, didn't have warriors training, would come up and be able to just lay into these people who had been at war. I mean, remember, it's the 100 Years' War. I mean, while it wasn't a continual 100 years, I mean, there was, battles, skirmishes throughout that period, who'd been at war for, possibly their whole lives, some of these grizzled veterans. And it just seems unlikely that a farmer girl just came out of nowhere and instinctually knew how to pick up a sword or a spear, polearm, bow, anything, and lay into combat veterans. I do know that she did have to dress as a man. They dressed her. I think she had a small escort when they first found her, and she actually convinced these guys. And I don't know what that says of the mentality of the people at the time, that a peasant girl was able to just come out of the nearest.
It says that they're sub-retards, which is what they were. They're just fucking mongoloid Albanian or barbarians, just fucking morons. That's the biggest thing about history we don't understand today, I think, is just how stupid they were. You had a handful of brilliant people, but the rest were just subliterate morons. Joan of Arc.
You don't think it spoke of like their desperation?
Of their desperation? I don't know how that ties. I think it speaks of their literacy or lack thereof.
I mean, even the
I don't think they were desperate. I think they just didn't know better. They were just blatantly lied to. So Joan of Arc, I mean, the situation these peasants were in, they were in a theocracy, which if you really have to picture it, you can't even, someone from today can barely imagine something like that, where the closest thing is, I mean, North Korea, but even that doesn't come close to the level of just theocratic madness that was France in this time. I mean, even the British and, the Russians, they were insane too, but the Germans thought the French were, they felt bad for their citizenry because, man, those peasants had it bad, right? Like, when Britain seems like a utopia, you have it bad. So the world Joan of Arc was in was like fucking world in Star Trek, where fucking Kirk beams down and they accidentally think he's God and like make him fight their fucking greatest warrior or something. And then,
30 seconds.
Well, we'll get more of this hot take later.
So we had 20 seconds left, and to cap it off, in 15 seconds, Joan of Arc, real, thumbs up, thumbs down, good, bad, ugly. What's your take? 10.
Let's talk about it next time.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. Peace.